Of technical problems today. Hello, we are now live. So that's what I love about live, is that anything can happen and we just have to be prepared. So I would just like to welcome my guest today, my first guest for 2025 on the B2B Live.
Oh, what a privilege.
Wonderful, fabulous Andy Lambert. Hello, Andy.
Hello, Sarah. Nice to see you, and thank you very much.
How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Doing well, slowly getting back in the swing of things.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? Especially when the Monday is so late in the month, the 6th of January. Everybody's had this really long period off, haven't they?
Yeah, those long Christmas periods, delightful as they are kind of dangerous in a way, that suddenly get very much into relaxing.
I know. It's really bad because you just really get into it, don't you? And then it's like you've got to crawl back into work again.
Exactly. A 5-day week on the first week back feels remarkably long, I find.
It's true. Actually, that's a good point. It is. It does feel like a long week. We're only Thursday. We've only got one more day to go after today, and we're nearly at the end of today. So we're nearly there, Andy. We're
getting there.
So, Andy, we have been knocking around the social media circles for quite some years together, seeing each other in various different places.
Indeed. I was trying to remember how many years it's been, but I'm not sure if I want to count back that many.
No, I don't want to count back either.
But a long time.
Long time. And that is when I first met you, when you were co-founder of Content Cal.
Mm-hmm.
In your previous guys, and now you are you're with Adobe, which is a slightly different transition for you.
Yeah, certainly been an interesting journey. Because we were right in the midst of building Content Cal when I met you, which would have been like 6-7 years ago, maybe, probably a bit longer. And we grew that to maybe about 30,000 businesses in 140 countries using the product. And in December 21, we were acquired by Adobe, which is naturally like a dream come true type of scenario as a co-founder. And now I get the privilege to build social media products at an organization like Adobe, which obviously impacts millions of people across the world. So very, very different, like positives and negatives from small into large organization, but still love social media as much as I did when I started. So we'll take that as a bonus.
Oh, that's amazing. And that is a real success story. And it is a dream, really, isn't it, to have that to happen as you say, as a co-founder. But one of the things I would attribute the success of Content Cal to, and obviously the product itself is, it's an amazing product, and it was servicing many people. But I think a big part of the success of Content Cal was the fact that you were out there, you were attending all the conferences, you were there at the events, you were meeting people, your customers, and helping them on the ground. You were there, your smiling, helpful face was right there, and you really did form the most amazing community around the product, which was obviously what you intended to do, and you did such a good job of it. And I think it's testament to all the work that you did, that it works, and it shows that community is so important, right?
Thank you, Sarah. That means a great deal. I'm nerdy enough that what you just said there makes my hair stand on end. So it's like it's one of those things that I'm like, it's so delightful when other people recognize what you've kind of set out to achieve. And whilst I wrote a book on all of this kind of stuff later on in my journey. I see we're both authors. I've got your book on my bookshelf over there.
Yours is not older.
Right. And in hindsight, I was able to think, I could explain what we did as like a model. But when I was in the midst of it, it was a bit of a like hope and a prayer, to be honest with you. It's just like, well, I feel like this is the right thing to do, but no idea whether it was. But I feel even more about the importance of personality-led community. And I think it's only going to get even more important given the data and social media is going in. and not all of the direction that was going is entirely positive. So I think it's going to become increasingly important for brands to create that human connection. Right.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And you were, and still are, such a well-known face that you were always, it was Andy from Content Cal, and now it's Andy from Adobe. And I think it's really important, as you say, for people to get out there, talk to people, and be the representative of the company that they're with.
That's exactly it. I speak about this a lot now because I kind of understand it more in retrospect. And I see that comment from Kim, actually. So I just want to say hello, Kim, because Kim was one of our early supporters in the early days. So I'll forever be grateful. But what I think now in hindsight, I understood by accident really is like the spheres of influence that our target audience operated within. So it made us seem a lot bigger than we are. So I would speak with people and people would get on a call with us and go, "Oh, Content Cal, you seem to be everywhere." And we're not everywhere. We didn't have the marketing budget to be everywhere. We're just in the spaces that you hang out, whether it's in that Facebook group or whether it's in that Slack channel, or whether it's in that LinkedIn group. We knew those spaces that our audience hang about in, were influenced by, in those communities, like the marketing meetup, for example. All of those spaces, that was probably one of the things I look back on and go, okay, I didn't realize what I was doing back then. I was just kind of like making it up as I went along. But in hindsight, I'm like, that is like the model as to how I would grow a brand moving forward. So yeah, is that making sense?
Yeah, that is making absolute sense. And I love that because I get that a lot. Gosh, you're all over LinkedIn. Well, actually, I'm posting 3 or 4 times a week. And I'm on LinkedIn, commenting and engaging with people. But because of it, also is to do with the algorithms as well, isn't it? And your content is fed to people who want it and who are interested in it, which is a brilliant thing, which we do like. But it's about choosing where you want to be, isn't it? And finding, and I talk about parties a lot because you probably know I quite like a party.
I saw you. I don't know if you remember, but like we were at the same Manic Street Preachers gig, and I saw you over the other side. It must have been like Wembley Stadium. It was a huge arena. I still recognise you the other side of the arena dancing around. So yeah, I know you love a party.
I do remember that night, and also looking over and thinking, I think that's Andy Lambert over there, but you were so far away I couldn't tell. So yes, I do like a party, as you know, and I talk about LinkedIn as being the biggest networking party in the world, and it's about being in the right room at the networking party. So, there's no point in hanging out in the space with, the construction and the building people if that's not your audience. So find your audience, find out where they are and hang out with them. And that's, quite obviously what you were doing. And when the people that you want to serve say you're all over, wherever, that's fantastic. That means you're doing it right. Which is brilliant.
That's exactly it. And I think, you've already identified, you're kind of following that same model as well. It's like, one, you are the same person online as you are in real life, which also massively helps, right? Because there is, with you, Sarah, it's like once met, never forgotten. And I think and take that in the best positive and in the best way possible. But like, because you are a character and you feel unique and you're authentic, whether you're in person or online. And you're both operating in the right spaces. You understand your audience's problems and pains and what they need to address. And you're also then representing it. Of course, you're an individual, like personal brand anyway, but the fact you're representing it through yourself as an individual. And this is what I'm trying to get other businesses to think more about. It's easier for someone, well, easier in a way, but some like yourself, who's a LinkedIn trainer, who is, runs business, is a solopreneur. But when you start to think about that from like a bigger business or team perspective, that need is still there. There still needs someone to be the personality of the business, to provide that you know, like you said, Andy from Content Cal, this is not a narcissistic move like I am the business or whatever. It's about, we connect with humans, not businesses. So how can we humanize our brand in the way that we've just been describing? And I think it's such an important thing for how we're going to stand out, not just on LinkedIn, but across all of our marketing.
Oh my gosh, it really is. And actually, I was with some clients this morning, and we kind of identified out of the team who are the ones who A, want to be going out and being the public face of the company, and B, who would be good at doing that. And we actually identified that, you know, 2 people would be good, 2 people would be not so good. So they're going to sort of, you know, they've said, okay, well, we'll leave it to you guys. You go out there and be the face of the brand, and we'll stay back here and do the organizing and the techie stuff and all of that. But it's important that they still have those faces going out, and this is the whole point about the whole employee advocacy thing, isn't it? So it's not necessarily even just the CEOs and the leaders. It can be anybody in the company can go out and be an ambassador, be a representative of the company, just being themselves.
Yep, 100%. Like, yeah, could not agree anymore. And I think it is, however, an important point. And I think this is I've been interested in getting your take on this. It's not for everyone though. And you know, whilst I've been really keen on employee advocacy, and I'm still a huge advocate for it. But equally, no one needs to see content created by someone that isn't very good on video, or is a little bit awkward. You know, and I think, like you said, finding the right people and really like lighting a fire under those individuals and giving them all the tools, I think is a really powerful way to get started, as opposed to like, hey, salespeople, you need to start posting stuff, you know. And it's, you know, I don't know, you spend your whole days thinking about this, so I'm interested in your take.
No, I do spend my whole days thinking about this. I'm doing it as well more and more, which is fantastic. But it's the word empower. I think you've used it at least twice already in this live, and that's the word. It's about empowering people to enjoy it, to want to do it. And it's if people aren't enjoying it, or they don't understand why they're doing it, then it's not going to sit. It's going to look awkward. It's going to look like they're a bit uncomfortable or a bit uneasy about doing it. And that just isn't going to work at all. So I actually spend a lot of my time when I'm working with new people is explaining the why rather than the how. So it's why should we as salespeople spend time on LinkedIn? Why should we as the HR people spend time on LinkedIn? How can it help the company? Yes, of course, but also how can it help me as an individual within the company, as an employee? Why should I bother? Because I'm an employee, my job's secure, I'm not looking for a job. So it's helping people understand that actually there's a lot that they can benefit individually, as well as for the good of the company as a whole. And that's the first piece. And I do think people need to know why they're doing things before they crack on. And then, yes, identifying what I call them champions and supporters. So the champions, we go out there, they're the ones, the faces, and then maybe some of the others who are less willing to have their faces out in the, you know, in the public sphere, or certainly don't want to go on video, can support their posts with comments and likes and shares and things like that. And then you're going to get you're always going to get people who want nothing to do with this whatsoever. That's fine. They can bring other things to the company.
Definitely. Yeah, it makes total sense, that model. And yeah, naturally it becomes, I expect, becomes more of an organic adoption of these employee advocacy programs as they see the champions start to succeed, and all the wonderful halo effect that brings, not just to the brand that we've just spoken about, the halo effect it brings to other people's careers, just doing more interesting stuff. And I think that's the real nice side effect that has happened through the last 10 years of posting on LinkedIn. It's of course, growing the business, all that kind of stuff is great. But the side effects of that is just being invited to do interesting stuff, meeting fantastic people. And it takes your life in such interesting trajectories. And I find that is one of the most pleasant things about having done this and built a personal brand and posted on LinkedIn and dealt with the annoying frustrations and the you know, I've fallen into the traps of the comparison against others, or why does that post do well and that one. basically looking at metrics in the wrong way, guilty of that, validating my self-worth based on how well my posts have performed. I've done all of that crap, and I still am very much sometimes find myself in that kind of mindset too. But the wonderful upside of that too is like the really interesting things, like doing talks in different countries or meeting fascinating, interesting people. And it's you can't put a price on those kind of life experiences and the stories that you can tell as a result. And I find that like a really delightful side effect.
Oh, it's just brilliant. And the doors that can open when you're out there on LinkedIn talking about your craft, your service, your expertise in some way, and just building those relationships. You just don't know, as you say, where you can end up physically, geographically, whatever. It really is incredible, because LinkedIn is such a vast space with people from everywhere, from all countries, all sectors, everything. So yeah, and the opportunities are brilliant. So yeah,
And
it's a win-win, surely.
it really is. And there's a lot of opportunity that is very much on the table on LinkedIn. I think that's the most exciting thing about it. It's like it's the easiest social platform to grow on, I find. So maybe I'm sure we'll get into that in a sec anyway. So that's why I'm very, very, I would say, optimistic about LinkedIn going into the next year. That's for sure.
Yes, me too, very much so. And I do see more of this community forming and this whole advocacy thing growing and growing. I think it's going to be a really amazing space actually on LinkedIn. So yes, very, very excited for what the year has to hold. We have Karina, who's here, who says, "Good to know your origins, Andy. It all makes sense now."
Hopefully that's in a positive way. But yes, I recognize the name. So thank you, Karina, and thank you for all your support. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. And what you do lots of amazing things on LinkedIn, and we just talked about how the right way to use LinkedIn by sharing your expertise, sharing your knowledge. And you do this with your regular show, which I love, with your updates on what's happening on social media generally, not just on LinkedIn. And I watch your show and I think, how on earth does he know that? Where did he get that information? So that's my question. Where do you get your intel, Andy, or is it a guarded secret?
It's actually really boring. So it's not a closely guarded secret. And like most good content, it's repurposed from elsewhere, but with my take, right? So there's two main resources that are really useful. One, which is Social Media Today. I subscribe to that. They have every single update, and you get a daily update as to what's happening in the world of social. And secondly is the weekly update I get from Matt Navarra. Definitely worthwhile giving Matt Navarra a follow. Most people know who Matt is if you work in social media. So they are the two primary resources. But like with anything in social or content or creativity in general, it's typically taking very few things are truly original. They're always like taken from elsewhere, but with your own spin based on your own perspective of where a market need is. So my take was, well, all of these social media news updates are coming from other places, but they take a lot of time to consume. Matt's email is unapologetically long as part of what it is, and it details everything that happens in social media. So unless you are on the true nerd spectrum like you and I, Sarah, you're really not going to read all of that, and it's actually just overwhelming. It's going to take an hour to consume every single week, and that's a big lift. And some of it documents stuff that's in test that might never happen. So I was like, why don't we just take the things that, one, that impact people today, and two, give people the implication. So 4 things every single week that I personally see from my experience of growing a business. What are the 4 biggest social media things that you need to know this week? And what's the implication of each of those? Because each of these things that all these news articles I read are just that. They're news articles. This is what's happening. But what does it mean? And over the course of the 6 years of doing these updates regularly, they've just become a staple of my content strategy. It's the content that's driven literally millions of views and engagements. And it's what I've become known for, which is fine, all good. And it's also been a really low lift thing to do, if I'm honest, because one, being pretty selfish, it helps me to articulate things verbally. So I've always been someone that thinks best when I'm talking, much to my wife's dismay. So it's just like probably too much verbal diarrhea sometimes, but like being able to take the news, digest it, and then speak it out loud, because I give myself 90 seconds to articulate it. That's been so powerful for helping me speak better and be able to present better in general. So the first times of doing these were horrible, awkward. If I look back to the first one in 2018, would be pretty horrible to watch. But now I'm able to turn them out. I take one take, turn my phone around, one take, 90 seconds, a little bit of editing in Adobe Express, obviously, and bang it on LinkedIn. It takes me, like I said, probably 10 minutes end to end. And that's it. That's the staple of my content strategy. And that's been super valuable. And that's why it's given me my kind of, it's been a core tenet of my content strategy. And that's why I've kind of taken that approach, that nothing unique, nothing special, really. It's just my perspective, what I would need as someone that's into social media, what are the key things I need to know. That's it.
Brilliant. I love that. And although it takes you a very short amount of time, I mean, first of all, I'm guessing when you first started doing them, it took you longer.
Yeah, very much so.
Got the process. Yes, I'm definitely I'm there. I'm remembering when I was doing videos way back when. But also you spend a lot of time collating the information and working out actually what is it, what are the 4 things out of all of the things that you're reading from the materials that you get, collating that, making it shorter, and putting it together. And we are humbly grateful every week. So thank you for doing it. But fantastic that it's also helped you build your own audience of relevant people who are interested in that content. And I love, and that's what I love about this whole process is that yes, you put some time in, but it benefits you, but boy, doesn't it benefit us. It really, really does. And you're not waffling on, you're not going on and on about, nonsense. It's very succinct and very concise. And a lot of people writing content on LinkedIn could learn from your succinctness and conciseness, because I see a lot of very long posts on LinkedIn, and I'm sure this is all really interesting, but I just don't have the time to read it. So well done you. And I love the fact that I wanted to talk about video actually, because you've highlighted this week particularly that video is a big we think video is a big focus for LinkedIn at the moment. I love that you just literally flip your phone around and go live, or record rather, it's not live, and record. So talking about video, do you think that is the key? It's that kind of almost rough edge video, or do you think there is also room, or there is more room for something more edited with topped and tailed, etc., etc.? Which do you think works the best?
So story comes before everything, right? So whether it's rough cut or whether it's highly produced, the story that you need to tell and who you're trying to serve is without doubt the most important thing. But notwithstanding that, there is, I would say that the knowns are including like the personality in the video, right? So the videos that will include an individual, a person, are going to perform better. And the typical other things that are going to work well, below 90 seconds, as we know, I think that's LinkedIn's guidance typically. I find that particularly useful as well, because that's a good guideline to say, like, this is where short form video stops at 90 seconds is typically where I'd put it. And you could apply that same rule to other social platforms, so it's nice and easy to repurpose. I would say, like, it doesn't matter too much whether it's rough cut or highly produced. So for me personally, for when I've put like the intro like buffers in my video, the stuff that makes it like, you know, here's the 4 things you need to know. It's like a little intro thing, and then transitioning into me, that hasn't performed as well as me just being like, hey, here's the 4 things you need to know. So I've personally found that, but then again, it's not particularly scientific because my my sample size is 1. So I don't know. Based on my own experience, the more effort I've put into production, the worse it's been. But that being said, there are other creators on LinkedIn that are doing some really cool stuff and have quite highly produced video, but it's still fundamentally them. There's just some cool transitions happening. So I would say it's not either or, but ultimately having the human at the center and just not worrying. The point is like, just don't worry about production value. Yes, audio needs to be good enough. Well, audio is important, and video's got to be like high quality, as in like resolution quality, because otherwise it just looks a bit ropey. But outside of that, you just don't need to worry about it in too much. And to be honest, like, LinkedIn are pretty chill as to the type of content they welcome to the platform, because the important thing here is that there is not enough supply to meet the demand of video content right now. LinkedIn are pushing video content heavily, but the way that they're messaging creators to try and get them to create more video content says to me there is not enough of it. So there's not enough supply. So really, I would remove any of our kind of like traditional barriers of like, oh, I'm not a very good video editor, or like I haven't got X, Y, and Z. If we've got a good story to tell and you're someone that's comfortable on camera, then we really can just crack on.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love all of that. And I think, so talking about the videos that you're creating, because, you know, I obviously get asked this question a lot. The videos that you're creating are, let's call them more rough cut videos, if you like, just sort of authentic, maybe the word we're after. And your audience have got used to seeing you in that form. So perhaps it's when you shift and you change. So maybe you put out more highly produced video and it doesn't do so well. Perhaps people don't resonate with it as well, because that's not what they're used to seeing. Whereas perhaps if you started putting out the well-produced videos, then maybe your audience would have got used to that. We don't really know, do we? Nope. I love the fact that you have a control of 1 to measure, but it's what works for you, and that's what's important. Because I don't think there isn't always a strict right or wrong answer. It's what works for your audience, and sometimes, and I hate saying this to clients, but sometimes I just have to say, I don't know. I don't know. We've just got to try and see different things and see what works the best. And sometimes we just have to hold our hands up and try and admit that there isn't a definite right or wrong.
No, there isn't. We're always looking for playbooks in social media, or like, here's a checklist, and it just doesn't exist really. There are some guidelines to work within, as in like, try and keep it short. You're going to need some text in the caption, but otherwise we can just play around with everything. Everything's up for grabs. Like, I've even seen like really high performing content of people just recording a screen share, and it's literally just taken from Teams, but they're talking about something really interesting, like showing the process of demoing. It was a process that they were using with ChatGPT, had thousands of likes because everyone's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm peeking behind the scenes of like someone's work process. If the story is strong, then whatever is the way to portray it, whether it's high produced or low production value, doesn't really matter. Story first.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And as long as the sound and the visuals are pretty good, they don't have to be super sparkly, but as long as they're pretty good, you're fine.
Yeah.
But no, I agree completely. It's the story that people want to hear, and if how it's presented is much, much less important. Mm-hmm. I agree. Now I have to lean forward because I've got my very small computer screen today, and I can't see, so I haven't got my glasses on. So Laura Murray, hello, Laura. Andy, your weekly social updates are fab. They are in such an easily digestible and helpful format. Yay. I love the way you provide the insights in both the video and the caption. So captions, yes. Captions are really, really key, aren't they?
They are indeed, and thank you so much, Laura. My thoughts and advice on captions is probably was fairly well documented anyway. Follows everyone else's pattern, and typically all I'm thinking about is that first line and a half or so ahead of read more. I always start with an emoji, as just always have. Doesn't mean that's the best thing, but I always find it just makes it stand out a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And we're making it as tempting as possible ahead of the read more button. Basically, think about those first, can't remember how many characters. Let's just call it a line and a half. I just think about that as the subject title for an email about to send. So, what's going to make someone open that email? It's always going to be an incredible subject line. So that first line and a half is your subject line. And captions, spacing out, as we know, the standard LinkedIn law of nice clear double spacing between paragraphs, that kind of thing. I don't use any formatting because that's a disaster for like screen readers, when some people are using italics and that kind of stuff. And very light on hashtags. Very rarely will use them at all because especially putting them in the copy makes the copy pretty hard to read. Sometimes we'll include a hashtag, although I'm pretty mixed on it, whether hashtags have any utility whatsoever. So very little guidance on captions, but they will always, caption is still, LinkedIn is one of the few platforms where a caption is still very important though.
I agree. And I think a lot of people are watching, people who are back in the office or whatever, they're traveling, they're reading, and they want to read the captions rather than listen perhaps. But also interesting about emojis and screen readers and things. So yes, I love an emoji, as you're probably aware. But when I first started on LinkedIn and I was sort of getting my feet in and having a look around, working out what it was like several years ago now, I wrote a post about are emojis valid on LinkedIn. Can you imagine a day when there were no emojis on LinkedIn? But there never used to be.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. And I appreciate also like the irony in my statement when I said, I include an emoji first, but don't put any italic text because it's a disaster for screen readers. Yeah, emojis are too, but so no right answers really.
Well, I think emojis are okay if you keep them at the beginning and the end of sentences. I think when you put them in the middle of sentences, the screen reader has a real struggle with them. So I think keeping them at the beginning and the end, I think we're clear. I think we're okay.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Oh, we've got another message from Daniel H. Hi, Andy and Sarah. What do you think is the key for keeping a professional yet engaging tone on LinkedIn? Ooh, we got a question there, Daniel H. Thank you for that. Andy, what do you think about being professional and engaging?
It's an interesting question. I was having a conversation about something similar earlier about is LinkedIn the place for boring content, was the title of the question. Because it got me thinking a little bit, because whilst I wouldn't like to think my content's boring, it's still quite, it's not offensive, put it that way, right? So I think the way I try and write is in a way that if I looked back on this in 3 to 5 years' time, would I still be happy that I wrote this? Equally, like, would I still be happy if, currently as I work in Adobe, would I be happy if, my boss read this? Would I be happy if whatever? So it needs to, one, be authentic to me. So it needs to be something that like I feel strongly about, but I also need to write it in a way that does have durability. Because and I think this is a really important thing to consider, because there's a way that we all could get our post liked more. We could be more divisive in our opinions. We could be more forthright, etc. But there's deeper considerations, and I think about like the digital footprint that we all leave on LinkedIn and the implications for what that means. Should I want to go and build another business in future, or implications for working for a public traded business, etc. Whilst I'm not significant enough for it really to move the share price, it's all those things that that you need to consider. So really, that is a long way of me saying that there is no single answer for what's the key to having a professional tone. And to be honest with you, like, professional does make it sound like it's going to be boring.
Yeah.
So we need to feel like, you know, they're treading the line between, this is something that I could send to a mate and they would go, oh, that's quite interesting. But equally, you know, it needs to be something that I'd look back on in 3 years and it still be okay. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, don't make it sound, you know, too wordy or like trying to overcomplicate things. And I've spent my life trying to, like, dramatically simplify what has been made to sound complex. And this is one of my biggest frustrations of social media in general. We've taken something that fundamentally, you know, has some quite simple rules to it, and we've made it complicated. So I've spent a lot of time in trying to just simplify things and be super crystal clear, and that really has been my tone for the audience that I've served. But that was a long answer with very little direct answer to it. So I'm curious on your take, Sarah.
I think professional is different for everybody. I think what we view as professional is different for each person, and I think everybody has their own line, if you like, that they do draw between what they do want to say and how they say it and what they don't. And I think being professional does sound boring, but it doesn't have to be boring at all. And in fact, somebody was engaging with a post of mine yesterday and today about being consistent on LinkedIn. In fact, it was my last week's guest, or the last guest I had on this show, which was Stella De Silva, who actually sat here next to me. It was very exciting. And we were talking about being consistent on LinkedIn to build trust. So if you're consistently posting, consistently being there on LinkedIn, whatever consistently means to you, then you're more likely to build your audience and build a trust within your audience. But then somebody said, but what if you're consistently boring? I thought, well, that's a very valid point. But back to being professional, I think as I say, everybody's take is different. LinkedIn has definitely become more, I call it friendly and more conversational. Some people, you know, the whole thing about it being like more like Facebook. I think it's important that we do talk about how we feel and what we're doing in our lives, not just about this is what we do, this is what we do. And so I think that all of that stuff is perhaps maybe what Daniel's referring to, is that more personal content. I'm not quite sure, but if that is, I still think there is a place for that. But I always advise people, if they want to talk about anything personal, first of all, is it relevant? Think about, is this relevant to my audience? Is it relevant? Will they be interested in the fact that I went and had a jam donut just now? Well, I didn't actually, but you know, if I had, is it important to them? Probably not. Is it important that I did some, you know, I've read this certain book about business? Yes, that probably is, because that changes me and makes me a better leader or a better teacher or whatever. So I always think, try to make sure that your audience will find whatever you talk about interesting or relevant in some way. And that, I think, is still keeping your content professional, still keeping it helpful, and keeping it more personable. I hope that makes sense.
I love it.
Yeah. Daniel Herity. Thank you, Daniel, because his name is Daniel H on LinkedIn, but your name is Daniel Herity. You might want to head to your settings, Daniel, and just change your profile name so that your full name shows. If you want to know how to do that, send me a DM and I will help you. It's a very easy fix. So there you go. I've just looked at the time, Andy. We are already 10 minutes over. We could literally talk forever and ever, I'm sure. So I'm going to skip the third question, which is about your future plans, but we're not going to go there. What I want to do is go straight to the last question, which I have for you, which I ask all of my guests. And I would love you to give our audience who are watching today, and when this finally does become a podcast, the audience listening on the podcast, 3 takeaway tips that they can use today, Andy Lambert style.
Okay. So number 1, choose your audience carefully. LinkedIn is the best place to build a network, and I'm not sure why people don't talk about it more than they do. If you were started from a Instagram page tomorrow, there's no quick way to grow followers. On LinkedIn, there really is, right? So it's very easy to connect with folks, to send connection requests, personalize those connection requests as you need. Incidentally, I actually get more acceptances when I don't personalize connection requests. So read into that what you will. But I'm not saying that would be my guidance for everyone. I'll defer to your guidance on this, but generally I do. But anyway, it's very easy for you to say, I want to target these people, and you can go find them. And likely when you connect with people, they'll typically, once they connected with you, then they become your follower. That is delightful. You can't do that. It's not like someone accepts a connection request on Instagram and they follow you. Only they'd have to elect to follow you back. How delightful is that? It's such a quick way of growing. And too many people overfixate on content on LinkedIn and don't think enough about here's the audience I want to serve. How do I go get them? And equally, so that kind of leads into the second point, is have some form of hero asset for LinkedIn. So whether that is a live that you're doing right now, Sarah, or could be a newsletter. Newsletters on LinkedIn are absolutely wonderful in my experience. I've slugged away to try and grow my Substack newsletter, which is fine, but it grows quite slowly. Whereas my newsletter on LinkedIn was just overtook it. 2 years of building a Substack newsletter was overtaken by my newsletter and is now doubled in 2 weeks. Insane. Because the best thing, and it's not it's not because aren't I great? It's just because LinkedIn has engineered that growth. So as I'm connecting with people, as soon as they accept my connection request, they become a follower. Great, but they also get pinged, as we all know, to subscribe to newsletter straight away, immediately. Nothing else you need to set up. No automation required for that. And that way, you're really growing much deeper connections incredibly quickly. So a fantastic way to build those relationships. All about having that hero asset. So build your audience, choose wisely, then build that hero asset. And then the third thing is collab as much as you possibly can. So like we're doing right now, because naturally you've just increased your distribution here, Sarah, because I've shared it with my audience today. We've both got circa 20,000 followers. So there you go. We've got, once this has been done, then I'm going to share it afterwards. Pretty low lift doing something like this, right? You've got to prepare some questions, but ultimately you can create valuable content quite quickly in collaboration with others. Even if you don't want to do a live stream like we are right now, other scenarios is what I term as praise-led marketing. Few people do this, too few people. Find those people that you care deeply about in your space and that you'd love to meet one day, and share on LinkedIn publicly why you appreciate them, what you respect about them. It's social media is not hard, right? Choose our audience, understand what they care about, and then realize that it's not about us, it's about our audience. Yeah. So build anything that our audience are going to care about. To give you an example of a scenario like this, we did we had social media manager awards every year. I mean, it's not an official award, it was just us recognizing people that in our space that we thought had done a fantastic job and celebrating them. And not only does that feel great because you get to celebrate others and turn over the spotlight to someone else, naturally there's tactics behind it too, of course. So you're celebrating those people also that you would love to speak to in future. And the best way of doing that is by leading with generosity, which is celebrating others first. And with that, you can be so intentional in what you're trying to build. And I don't know any platform better than LinkedIn to be that intentional and truly control and have as much control as possible over your growth through selecting your audience, choosing, connecting with the right people, building that newsletter or that individual asset, and then working with others. Because everyone has everyone wants to be seen and heard and respected. So let's lean into that. I appreciate that. So there's my 3 tips.
Amazing. I love all of them, but I love having one asset that you can use on LinkedIn, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And newsletters, I don't publish enough, but whenever I do publish my newsletter, it always does really well. And I always get lots and lots of feedback from it, which is great. But the collaboration piece, definitely, because you've introduced me here to who did I not know here? So I didn't know Karina at all. So that, well, I knew of Karina, but it's wonderful to have people here in watching this live who you've brought in, and now hopefully I can get to know them as well, and likewise, and having Daniel and Laura and Kim making commenting on the posts as well. I mean, that's all they're all collaborating with both of us, which is fantastic. And it's not hard to do. It really isn't hard. And I occasionally I will do a post or a video even of somebody I've met recently who's impacted on my life, or who's helped me in some way. And those little acts of kindness go such a long way, don't they?
Oh, they really do. They really do. Yeah. And I think it's just about kind of reframing how we approach social media, not just LinkedIn. It's, just try not to over fixate on the content that we create. And I just see that as like, it's kind of like hit and hope, basically. We can be really intentional with our actions on LinkedIn when we truly understand who we want to serve, the challenges or problems that they face, and what they really care about. So we can tell the better story and know exactly all of those spheres of influence. So if like I wanted to connect with Sarah because you've got great people that care about employee advocacy, and maybe I want to get into organizations that understand employee advocacy, you would be the perfect person to collaborate with, right? And co-create content together. So it's not rocket science, this. It just requires a bit of thought, not just hitting and hoping.
Well, it isn't rocket science to a communicator and a connector like yourself, Andy. But bear in mind, not everybody has those that sort of innate talent and skill. But you do it so well.
You're rather generous.
It's just been brilliant. And I've loved getting to know you over the years in different spaces and different ways. And I'm going to definitely keep an eye on what you're up to, because I know there's some exciting things planned for 2025. You alluded to that last time I saw you at the Social Day B2B conference. And I'm very excited to see more from you. And thank you so much for your time today, Andy Lambert.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Sarah. Sorry for overrunning. I chat far too much.
Fine. So I'm going to play us out. If I can see, this is the trouble now. I'm not on my usual computer, so it's all a bit crazy and a bit not really very organized. And it's just all set up differently. That's so weird. I can't find anything. I'm trying to find my music, but it's eluding me. It's hiding. So we'll have to go out with no music. Maybe we can sing.
I'll follow your lead.
Maybe not. I don't think it would be fair. So Andy Lambert, thank you very much for being with us today on the B2B.
See you soon.